Hello and a happy new year on this January 1st, 2025. This is a global news update on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. This New Year's Eve wasn't exactly a party everywhere. Puerto Rico struggled with a major blackout that affected half of the island. The cause of the outage is being investigated, but preliminary findings reportedly point to an issue with an underground cable as the reason for the blackout. As Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory, President Joe Biden was briefed on the outage. Local authorities say restoring power could take up to 2 days. The blackout came as the Caribbean island entered its peak tourism season, and just hours ahead of New Year's Eve celebrations. Polish President Andrzej Duda has extended New Year wishes to his fellow Poles. In his address, Duda said that the security of the homeland must be the top priority for his future successor. President Duda's second term comes to an end in 2025, with Poland heading to presidential election this May.
We live in troubled times, in times during which we have learned that peace and freedom are not given once and for all. They must be sought every day. That is why the security of our homeland must be the most important issue for the future president, regardless of who we entrust with this office. For me, the security of Poland and Poles has always been a top priority and a matter that should be above all political divisions. This is how I have acted and will act until the last day of my presidency.
Operation Phoenix, the Polish Armed Forces mission to help rebuild southwestern Poland in the wake of September's flood, has been partially paused for Christmas. After the holidays, troops will return to flood-affected areas to continue their work. Recently, the Polish Ministry of Defense extended Operation Phoenix by several more months.
They deploy wherever there's still work to do. They renovate flooded buildings, build temporary bridges, and help the local population.
They assist in households, helped us clear the streets and remove all the debris left over after the flood. It's a thankless job, but invaluable for the locals.
The soldiers have helped distribute Christmas packages to flood victims.
We have brave soldiers here helping to unload and distribute all this donated aid.
Christmas is a special time of the year, even for the soldiers. After over 3 months of tireless effort, Operation Phoenix is now on hold for the holidays. Troops involved with the operation were invited to a holiday celebration before returning home to reunite with their families.
The majority of the soldiers are returning home for Christmas, but our efforts are far from over. We're just on break from December 23rd to January 8th. Some soldiers are staying, including those managing street lighting in Stronie Śląskie, supervising light poles, oversee fuel levels and distribution, and protect equipment set to be put to use soon.
The soldiers deployed to help the residents on day one of the flood. Their commanders proudly say that the army made significant contributions to reducing the fallout of the disaster, as the high floodwaters directly threatened big cities further upstream.
We managed to save cities like Wrocław, Opole and Nysa. These are key cities for Lower Silesia and the Opole region. But above all, we managed to gain the trust of the local community.
The scale of Operation Phoenix speaks for itself. At its peak, 26,000 soldiers were involved.
26,000 troops is more than some of neighbors have in their whole armed forces. No non-military operation launched in the past couple of decades by our army has seen that many soldiers deployed.
But the mission is far from complete.
Operation Phoenix was scheduled to end this year, but was extended through end of April 2025, and the troops will remain deployed in these areas as long as it's necessary.
3 months after the flood, the sheer scale of the devastation is still shocking. Just like the mythical phoenix that rose from the ashes, the flood-affected communities are hoping to rise from the rubble and ruin brought by the raging waters.
2024 is shaped up to be a year of disasters, both natural and man-made. Millions of people have had their lives altered due to floods, hurricanes, and wars. Let's recap some of those moments and learn what we can from them so they're not repeated in 2025.
2024 became a stage for catastrophic weather events, as the climate crisis played one of the main roles. natural disasters have reached a new level of ferocity. Devastating floods have swept across Europe, with countries like Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, and more seeing the most intense floods in decades.
Everything. You can see the line. It was flooded almost up to the ceiling. The water went down to here, but the walls, everything was soaked.
Meanwhile, Florida's Big Bend, as well as the Gulf of Mexico, were torn apart by Hurricane Helene, followed by Hurricane Milton, causing millions of dollars' worth of damage. Experts say the increased intensity and frequency of these catastrophic events could have been caused by climate change.
So the same situation, weather situation, have happened in the past, but now they happen in a warmer and moisture atmosphere. So climate change clearly changed the intensity of such events.
Despite their catastrophic aftermath, natural disasters were far from the most impactful events in 2024. That title would have to go to man-made conflicts. Russia's invasion of Ukraine entered its third winter by the tail end of 2024, as Moscow's missiles keep falling on the Ukrainian cities and power grid.
The attack occurred just as the cold weather set in. This is a deliberate, cynical Russian terror aimed directly at people. Each missile was targeted at specific energy facilities, and thanks to the precision of our warriors and the reliability of the air defense systems, many were saved.
All throughout the year, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has looked to Western allies for further military aid. While both the EU and the US still support Kyiv in its efforts to defend its territories, not enough equipment is being handed over to Ukrainian soldiers, according to Zelensky. 2024 also saw the continuation of the war in the Middle East between Israel, Hamas, Iran, and its proxies, as the IDF continued its crusade inside and outside the Gaza Strip. The biggest escalation to come out of the conflict this year was the exchange of fire between Israel and Tehran, with both powers launching volleys of missiles at the other. Speaking of the Middle East, the world bore witness to the overthrowing of the Russian-supported regime of Bashar al-Assad, the Syrian president. Rebel forces took over a large part of the country, forcing Assad to flee to Moscow.
As you know, Bashar al-Assad fled Syria and he will be chased through legal means. As you know, he also took large amounts of money from this country and escaped with it abroad. We will request his return from the parties that protect him now through legal channels so he can be tried by the Syrian judiciary.
Last but not least is the mounting conflict around Taiwan. Over the last year, China has significantly stepped up the number of its military drills around the island, putting pressure on Taipei and its Western allies. While direct confrontation remains unlikely, the potential for miscalculation and accidental escalation is high, making the Taiwan Strait one of the world's most dangerous flashpoints. In 2024, news of new and ongoing conflicts have had a chokehold on the public sphere, leading to fears of further escalations and the breakout of a larger conflict in the years to follow.
The third year of the Russian invasion has been a difficult one for Ukraine, marked by battlefield setbacks. While neither of the sides seems anywhere close to achieving their military goals, voices calling for ending the conflict through a negotiated settlement are growing louder.
2024 began with most intense fighting concentrated around the town of Avdiivka. The struggle for the town seemed like it might turn into the Second Battle of Bakhmut, with months-long street fighting. Instead, Russian forces advanced on Ukrainian flanks, threatening to encircle the town. Ukrainian forces withdrew to avoid becoming trapped. We didn't have enough people, we didn't have enough shells, we didn't have enough possibilities to throw them back. If we had had a large amount, or at least an okay number of shells, we could have stopped the enemy, but unfortunately we didn't have them. These scenarios repeated themselves in other towns in the Donbas, like Vuhledar. Instead of continuing frontal assaults on fortified towns, the Russians chose to advance through open areas, in some places pressing as far as 50 kilometers ahead throughout 2024. The year also saw Western countries lift the vast restrictions imposed on the use of weapons supplied to Ukraine. This paved way for Ukraine's offensive into Russia's Kursk region. Following a quick advance in early August, the operation quickly stalled, turning into a positional warfare of attrition,
also seen in other sections of the front line.
Of course, it's preferable to fight on their territory. It would be best if they weren't on our territory at all. That's what I'd call victory for us.
But despite months of Russian counterattacks, Ukraine still controls several hundred square kilometers of Russian territory. The Kursk region has also seen the reported deployment of North Korean troops sent to fight against Ukraine along Russian forces.
The commander-in-chief reported on the participation of North Korean soldiers in battles on the side of the Russian army. There are many details about the destruction of these forces. According to preliminary data, the Russians are trying to hide North Korean losses. The Ukrainian defense forces and our intelligence are finding out the full information about the real losses of Russian units, which also involve Koreans.
Throughout last year, Ukraine has also expanded its strategic bombardment campaign, targeting Russian fuel and ammunition depots, as well as air bases. Long-range drones were able to strike deep into Russian territory, as far as republics of Chechnya and Tatarstan, once again bringing the war to Russia proper. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has unveiled his victory plan, outlining his ideas on ending the war. One of the points called for NATO invitation for Ukraine, something agreed on in principle, but not supported by all member states at this point.
This week we have support from our victory plan partners, thanks to France, Lithuania, our partners, our Nordic and many other allies in the European Union. There are very good signals from the United States. We are already hearing the rhetoric and its changes.
This year has also seen intensified discussions on ending the conflict through negotiations, especially following Donald Trump's victory in the US presidential elections. Trump vowed to pressure the fighting sides to sit down at the negotiating table throughout his campaign. While various proposals are being floated in the media and hinted at by Western officials, the warring parties have still made no concrete steps towards beginning the negotiations.
I would now argue that Ukraine doesn't need more ideas on what a peace process could look like, but I would argue let's not have all these discussions step by step on what a peace process might look like. Make sure that Ukraine has what it needs to get to a position of strength when those peace talks start, when the Ukrainian government has decided they are ready to do so.
Ukraine is finishing this year in a similar situation as it began 2024, locked in positional warfare of attrition with Russia. While the prospects of holding negotiations to end or freeze the conflict looms closer, they have yet to begin, and any possible outcomes remain uncertain.
And now for New Year's wishes from North Korea to Russia. Kim Jong Un has sent a New Year's letter to Vladimir Putin, pledging to strengthen the partnership between Pyongyang and Moscow. In his letter, Kim reportedly wished victory upon Russia, saying he wishes for 2025 to be the year Russia defeats what he called neo-Nazism. Kim also expressed his willingness to strengthen bilateral ties between the two countries. Back in June of 2024, Kim and Putin signed a mutual defense treaty. The document calls for each side to come to the other's aid in the event of an armed attack. Since then, thousands of North Korean troops have been seen fighting in Russia's war on Ukraine. The volume of gas flowing to Europe via Ukraine has been dropped off yesterday and will be brought to a complete stop in just a few hours as the deal for the transit of Russian gas through Ukraine expires on January 1st. Slovakia and Moldova will be significantly impacted by the change.
A 5-year gas transit agreement between Moscow and Kyiv expires at midnight.
There is no deal after New Year's Eve because the transit contract negotiated and pursued by Ukraine in spite of the war is lasting until the end of this year. So there is no legal ground for further cooperation between Russia and Ukraine.
The expiration of the contract brings Moscow's once mighty hold over the European gas market to an end. Kyiv refused to sign a new deal because of the ongoing war.
Russia will be losing at least $6 billion of the profits a year. And we are not going to trade with the aggressor, same way as we are asking for our allies not to trade with the aggressor as well.
Among the countries that will be affected the most are Moldova and Slovakia. Prime Minister Robert Fico threatened that Slovakia would stop energy supplies to Ukraine in retaliation. Only a handful of nations remain dependent on Russian fossil fuels following the invasion of Ukraine. At its peak, Russia controlled 1/3 of Europe's gas market. Today, Europe buys most of its gas from Norway, the United States, and Qatar.
That's all for this news update here on TVP World, but stay tuned, much more to come. Take care.